as like this is a drastic period of change between now and the early 2030s. Feels like we could call it, 32, 33, and it feels like everything about our lives is different. Feels like the split continues, at least through this year. It feels like it gets louder and louder. And unfortunately, it doesn't feel like we've hit the top of that noise meter. Every time I've asked about the future of money, a couple things have come through. One, that the US dollar becomes like worth nothing. I am concerned about Trump and him being able to finish his presidency, that in the future we will look back and look at a map, from the 2020s and see how much change has happened on the map. I've actually looked at the relationship between the US and Russia, and the energy keeps going back and forth, back and forth. People may think they are the enemy, but actually they're not. And then they go public and say something that makes you feel like they're the enemy, and then they're not. Venezuela doesn't feel like it's a standalone operation. So this is a year for healers and therapists and coaches that will really be able to go next level with their work. And I have chills running through my whole body as I say that, because on a global level, there is going to be, and we've already seen, a lot of chaos, a lot of destruction, a lot of civil discord in all different countries. But on an individual level, I actually feel that 2026 is a year of bountiful opportunities and creative birthing and feeling like so many different things are possible.
Welcome to the Enlighten podcast, where I am going to take you into a deep exploration of what it means to exist in this current reality. We are going to raise your vibes, open your mind, expand your heart, and dive deep into the wondrous mysteries and possibilities of this lifetime. There's been a spiritual catalyst that has set in motion the awakening process of many across the globe to return to the knowingness of self and unite what has been separated. Together, we're going to bring light into that darkness. We're going to remember the joy of living. But most of all, we're going to turn up the volume of our own eternal power and do the thing we're here to do. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Enlighten podcast. I'm super excited for today's guest because we're going to get into some 2026 predictions. Dallisa Hocking is a fifth-generation psychic medium renowned for her bold and uncannily accurate predictions about global events, U.S. affairs, and personal destinies. In fact, she foresaw the major health crisis in 2019, which became what we know as the pandemic and changed the world. She then also predicted the tragic helicopter and airplane crash in the Washington, D.C. area just days before it happened. She also accurately called the outcome of the most recent U.S. presidential election, which I will say not many people were predicting accurately, and also foresaw a significant event on January 1st, 2025, which was the Las Vegas Cybertruck explosion. Beyond her predictions, however, Dallisa has dedicated her life to helping people understand their self-worth, heal energy wounds, and connect with the unseen realms. And with a unique ability to see through the layers of energy, she cuts through fear and uncertainty, guiding others towards clarity, empowerment, and divine connection. Dallisa, welcome to the Enlighten podcast. So great to have you here.
Thank you, Nicole. We're going to have a juicy conversation today.
Oh, we are. In fact, to the audience, we kind of started to get into it just before we hit record. So we're gonna let you in on some of the juicy details that we were kind of talking about. One of the things that I love to discuss on the show are some of the topics that kind of get skirted around or maybe not, dived into as much as they should. And one of the things that you and I were just briefly talking about is I guess the shadow aspect of predictions and its impact on audiences, as well as the victim rescuer kind of energies that are really rising within people who maybe are I guess here's the thing. Make a really strong caveat here. We're not saying that predictions aren't good. What we're saying is that they can definitely be misused or not used at all in the correct way. And it can sometimes, if all you're doing is consuming predictions, really highlight perhaps something inside of you. So, what have you noticed with the shadow element of predictions and how people are using them or not using them?
I got hit over the head about a month ago. I've been making predictions for a decade, and it's what I've become known for. And I was completely caught off guard when I started getting downloads over a 24 to 48-hour period. And my gifts come in, I see, I hear, I feel the main psychic gifts. And so it was rolling through my body and my energy, a message from spirit that really wanted to be told and spoken aloud. And so I'm delighted that we actually get to have this conversation today. Spirit was clear that the consumption of predictions is a phase that we have been in, but then they said we are now in and shifting deeper into the activation phase, and that consuming predictions was intended to help people get prepared for what's happening. And when they were speaking to me directly, they were talking about my guides, my angels, my ancestors, they were talking about how you've made all these predictions. You've talked about all these different areas of life that are being impacted, and we're seeing it in the news headlines now. But now we really would like you to shift gears and help people remember that they have the answers within them. They have the intuition that they can feel in their own body. They have the ability to communicate with their higher self, with their own spirit team, and to really consider the dynamics of making predictions and what it's actually doing. And what I was receiving in that download for a couple of days was like seeing myself, because I've done a bunch of podcasts and seeing these thumbnails and like the headlines of, am I predicting an apocalypse or whatever the headline is that went along with it, and feeling in my body that there were all of these people listening to that as like a dopamine hit. And we talked backstage, like feeling like this sugar rush, like you listen to it and then you feel better. But how long does that last for? How long do you feel calm for or feel like you're not in a spiral of fear? And I've been there myself. I used to love watching different prediction videos and thought they were really fascinating. But now it's almost like spirits moved me into this different angle to see it from this new perspective, which to your point goes into that victim rescuer dynamic, because I see that energy play out over and over again in our lives. And I have to be really honest with myself. I feel that making predictions for all these years, I have felt like I was that rescuer role in hindsight. Like I was providing all of these predictions to try to help someone feel better, not really seeing the tentacles of the energy and how that was being received on the other end of the information. And that there were a lot of people that feel like they were in this victim energy where they were the victim of their own life or the victim of the world, or the world was out to get them, or the world is scary. And I felt like I'm doing them a service. Like I am providing this information and they get to better prepare. But now I see it as actually enforcing or amplifying the energy that goes between a rescuer and a victim energy. And so the important piece of this, I feel like, is sure, we can absolutely, like you said, Nicole, talk about predictions and talk about what's coming. But spirits made it very clear that there is a second piece of it, which is what are we doing within ourselves to help work through with the fear that we're feeling and understanding why are we drawn to the prediction in the first place, and is it activating something inside of us that is asking for us to go much deeper and to get more curious about the things that we're experiencing in our own lives.
So is very well put. And I think fear is something that has been, I don't know, there's something about 2025. There was a lot of change last year. And I still feel like there's residual of 2025 even in this moment as we are recording this in mid-January. So it feels still like we've still got like I don't know, like a crossover or a carryover of 2025 still in 2026. I feel like that's about to shift though as we're moving into February. But with this idea of fear, how do people work with their fear when it's kind of catalyzed by perhaps a prediction? What could that be doing within them and how to use that for their own life in making positive use?
One of the biggest ways that I have found my own radical liberation inside of myself and what I've seen in clients and students is owning what I feel 100%. And so if there is something that's coming up inside of me that feels like fear or unease or agitation or shame, whatever that low frequency is that's bubbling up, I own it. And that's what I encourage people to sit with and consider is what is the emotion that I'm feeling and why am I feeling this? And digging and leaning into that question until you get to a root, like a root energy. And I had a mentor years ago who walked me through three core energies. And I started applying this to all of my emotions anytime I felt triggered by something. And I have found that it's one of the most useful tools I've ever learned. And so I'll share it now. It's pretty simple. So anytime you feel something that you don't want to feel, get curious and lean in and ask yourself, okay, I'm feeling what? Identify it. Stick with black and white if you can. Just stick with the facts. I'm feeling this because this. And I often will close my eyes and just take a few deep breaths and ask myself, which one of the three core energies does this go back to? And sometimes it's one, sometimes it's two, and sometimes it's all three. So I'm feeling this, I'm leaning into it, I've stated it. Okay, is it approval? Approval is the first one. Approval is something about this makes me feel unlovable or unworthy, and I really want to feel like I'm loved and approved of. So approval is the first one. The next one is safety. There's something about this that I don't feel safe, I don't feel secure, and so I'm feeling that triggered energy inside of myself. So safety is number two. The third one is something about this makes me feel out of control, and I actually want to feel like I am in control. So, approval, safety, and control are the three core energies. So, once you identify one, two, or all three of those, then the way to heal that energy, the antidote is to actually give whatever it is to yourself. So if it's that you've identified I'm set off because I feel like I'm unlovable, I'm not approved of, then you would go into either doing like a guided meditation for the heart chakra or doing some affirmations around self-love or like writing a love letter to yourself. If it's safety, really remembering a time, a memory that you have where you felt really safe. It could be, just you closing your eyes and feeling yourself sitting at home with a warm blanket. And then control would be like closing your eyes and taking yourself into a memory where you really felt like things were just in flow. And so that's how you would do that. And you give it to yourself and you start doing that practice. And in my experience of it, the triggers actually don't show up as much anymore. And when one does, you actually start to get really curious about why it's there because you've been doing the work on them. And so when one bubbles up, it's like, ooh, like what didn't I heal already? Or what haven't I listened to or leaned into in myself that's asking for that? And it gets kind of juicy when you get in there because, especially people listening that have been doing the healing work for years, on occasion, there may be something that's coming up and you're feeling. And I think that's where the gold is because I think our emotions really help to point us in the direction of what we haven't yet looked at or considered, or another layer that's coming up and asking for that attention, looking for that awareness, and looking for that healing.
I love that. This is coming off the heels of a very interesting experience I had with client yesterday, where we were moving her through the embodiment of anger. And it really like, oh, it was so beautiful. Like it just personally, I just get high off this stuff, like it's what lights me up when I like do this work with clients and they're having these incredible breakthroughs of realizing going your whole life thinking like anger is your enemy. Anger is the thing that's going to destroy you and your relationships. Anger is the thing that's going to make you a bad person. Anger is the thing that, whatever it is. And realizing that when she actually embraced her anger and utilize and like connected with it, like you said, like felt into it, all of these things, and then applied it into her actual life. And what transpired as a result actually proved the whole narrative she had about anger was the exact opposite, was actually like not like repressing her anger was actually taking her out of control. And that when she was angry, she was able to take control of a situation. She was able to like assert her power. She was able to change the direction of things, right? And in the end, what happened? She felt calm and at peace after, and it was like, oh, we have these different like ideas of what taking on an emotion, whatever it might be, that you don't like you're experiencing resistance to that you think is not good for you, bad or whatever. And anger is a big one. Anger is a big one, especially I find for people who like in this instance, she was like, I just need to be the good girl. And I totally related to that with that one. That was me, I was like, I just got to be the good girl, the that's how I'm going to be loved. That's how I'm going to get all the things that I need in this world, is it just going to be the good girl. And then there's also like spiritual people, it's like that's when the spiritual ego comes in. Well, no, I'm just going to be love and light and I'm not going to express any anger. And, and then you just never deal with shit. And so, like, you're never embodying, you're never manifesting what you really want because you're so afraid of like where the creative power actually sits, which is in our anger, right? Because there's a lot of passion there and knowing just how to master it. So I love that you're saying this because I think it's so true. And so, utilizing these predictions that you're going to be sharing with us shortly as a way to kind of feel in and see what's coming up inside of you guys that are listening. When Dalissa starts to share some of these predictions, really pay attention to what's coming up in your body and where does it sit in those three sections: the approval, the safety, or the control. Those are three big ones. And understand the more that you, here's the thing too, the more you feel into it, the more it doesn't matter as much because it's become normalized, it's become accepted, it's no longer a thing. So I think that's one of the reasons why it can be so powerful.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's a couple things coming up, even as you're saying that I think Spirit wants to interject here that as we move through 2026 and beyond, I think there's going to be a couple of themes that maybe not the individual listening to this right now, but it could be somebody around them. One is people that have been hiding themselves, that have a fear of being seen or being heard, and really leaning into that and working on that, especially this year, where they felt like they've had to hide or that they're not worthy of being heard or experienced. And then the other one is this identity crisis of who am I? What have I been moving through the world trying to be or introducing myself as? Because it does feel like there's going to be so many opportunities in 2026 for us to consider who we are and what matters to us. And if we didn't have a job title attached to, hi, my name is, this is what I do, then who are we at the core of it? And understanding what we value and why we value those things. What are the communities that we are plugged into? What do we offer as our own unique gifts and talents within those communities? So I think those two things that were just coming in strong as you were talking, Nicole, about just these two themes that may really be in effect in 2026. And my hunch is that one of the two or both of those will impact almost everyone listening to this in some way this year.
Oh yeah. I used to be the seen and heard. There's probably some residuals still in there, like some leftover stuff. But the identity one, oh my God, that one hit hard closing out 2025. I would say the last 4 months of 2025, I was like, what is this? And I should have known because it was in my astrology chart, but I just was like, when you are almost certain what you're doing and you're exact like, oh, I know, like this is what I'm doing, this is why I'm here and all. And then no, life steps in, the universe steps in and saying, but there's more, and realizing how much I've had to let go of so many things that I guess were holding me back from finding, I like to call it like a doorway that I would have never seen, was sitting there waiting for me to open and step through. That is a whole new beginning of who I am, what I'm doing here. Like I thought I had it all figured out. I'm like, oh no, there's more. And I mean, it's now that now that I have a better idea of what that might be, it's it's exciting and I'm just like, ooh, this is going to push me into different things. Ooh, this is going to make me like really feel the pressure of a lot of things that I haven't felt in a long time. And in one case you're like, oh, really? But the other time you're like, oh, yes, like I want that. So I totally feel that for 2026 that, the identity and the being seen and being heard are big, big themes for this year to really embody. And so if someone is, what's spirit saying? Is if people are really stepping into moving out of their comfort zone and embracing those things, what lies ahead for them?
Oh, such a good question, Nicole. I feel that there is this nudge from the universe to all of us to be okay with the uncomfortable. Because either one of those, either finding our identity or who we are now, or being seen, being heard, there's probably going to be moments along that pathway that are going to feel uneasy or feel uncomfortable. But that doesn't mean that it's not in your highest and best interest. I kind of describe it as feeling like we're stretching, right? Like, ooh, this feels uncomfortable. I would personally get really excited and curious about that because it's like uncharted territory, a place you haven't yet explored. And think about all of the gold and riches and abundance, and not necessarily monetarily, but just think about all of the goodness and the high frequency that is in these spaces and places that maybe you haven't been aware of. Maybe the door just showed up. Or maybe you're like, gosh, I know I have something I want to share with the world, but I feel really on edge about it. Either I don't want to physically be seen, or I don't know if what I am saying is going to come off the right way. And spirit's nudging us to just do it anyway. And I think that that goes along. You talked about astrology a moment ago, goes along with the Aries energy that we're going to have front and center for 2026.
Mm-hmm.
It's asking of us to be that Aries energy, which is the I am. And Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. It's the one that raises their hand and says, "Send me in, I'll go." Um, and we're all going to be asked to consider how that shows up in our own life. And so it could be that using the example of being seen and being heard, it's, making the YouTube video anyway. Even if you're uncomfortable, even if you think it doesn't look right, upload it anyway, because we have a lot of this Pluto and Aquarius energy as well, which is asking us to be uniquely who we are, combined with the Aries. So the gifts and talents and voice, the unique energy signature that only you have, if there is that nudge inside of you that you're supposed to share, you're being tapped now.
Mhm.
They're tapping you on the shoulder saying, and now is the time. And trust yourself enough to know that as you do it and as the stretch is happening, it will get easier. You will find a rhythm that feels better for you, that feels more natural. You'll discover what it is that you want to talk about that creates excitement and passion inside of yourself. So be open to that. And if you're the person that's like, wow, I feel like a door I never knew was there just showed up and it's asking me to walk through, but I've never been that person before. I've never been that version of me. How incredible of an opportunity is that? And I think that really speaks to 2026 because on a global level, there is going to be, and we've already seen a lot of chaos, a lot of destruction, a lot of civil discord in all different countries. But on an individual level, I actually feel that 2026 is a year of bountiful opportunities and creative birthing and feeling like so many different things are possible. And that door, as you walk through that new door and figuring out what this new chapter is in your life, you are not going to see the entire staircase, but it's having enough faith that even though you can't see it, that each step will lead you to the next step, and that the timing of each piece of it will be divinely timed, and that there will be breadcrumbs laid out for you, and there will be synchronicities, and you will meet the right people at the right time, and your energy will shift, and that will begin to magnetize in new blessings that you haven't had before. And so, if either of those things are happening, I'd say congratulations and welcome to the party. It's going to be a fun year.
Oh, well, I love that prediction. I mean, yeah, I think 2026 is going to be an even bigger change year for us just because like you said, this Aries energy is really calling upon courage. It's calling upon boldness. It's calling upon being ready to step forward when everything inside of you usually isn't. It's like it's that kind of energy. It's willing to put yourself first. It's willing to um do the thing anyway. And I will say, as you said, like the whole thing about the video, if it doesn't look right or what something's off, like when I think back to some of my videos over the many years of being on YouTube now, some of my best videos were when I just jumped on and off the cuff, maybe no zero makeup, whatever it was, and just riffed for like 15 minutes. And so and I, there's just so many different ways of expressing yourself. And I think this is a time where this year is really calling us to embody who we have been spiritually practicing for, because I think there's been a lot of spiritual practice around that. So, what are you seeing for 2026 when it comes to one of the things that I've been hearing is there's going to be some big changes with money or markets. What have you been getting around that?
Whenever I ask about the stock market, for example, and of course, I'm no financial advisor,
Yeah.
do not come to me for your money advice. But when I look at it energetically, it feels like we're like in an airplane experiencing turbulence, like one moment you're fine and then it feels like the bottom like drops out. So that feels like the overall energy that we're in monetarily. And every time I've asked about the future of money, a couple things have come through. One, that the US dollar becomes like worth nothing. They've showed it to me as like having no value. Now, I know we can talk about that spiritually and how it's just a piece of paper, but the prediction feels more in line with a major change to the US dollar where the dollar, the paper money, wouldn't be worth anything. So the way that we would move through the world spending and paying for things feels like it's up for a drastic change. And it looks to me in the energy field that there will be a digital currency system. And they've showed it to me like this big web of light where whoever is living in the US, for example, would be able to just in a moment send through a digital currency to another person across the globe. And it's all part of like the same network. It's almost similar to what we do with credit cards these days, like where we just can usually go to a different country or wherever we want to go and use our Visa or MasterCard. But this feels like it's one centralized system that many countries would opt into. And with that, it feels like the dollar disappears. So there's going to be a lot of change around who is going to opt into it, who is going to opt out, who's going to fight the new system. There's going to be people that will go and create their own micro communities, either with tiny houses or earth ships, if anyone's familiar with those, and create their own food and their own community and just say, you know what, I'm done with this. And it also goes on in line with AI and people that are like, no, I don't want to go down this pathway. So we will naturally be seeing almost like the split between those that are going to step more fully into the future of technology, AI, and digital money. And then you have the other group that says no. But both feel like they exist and they both feel like they are going to be okay with the choices that they make. But it's almost like two different groups of people living on the same planet, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think we already have that in a sense, in like different ways, like not specifically in that way. But no, that makes a lot of sense. And I'll bet that both provide value in their own right and also have a lot to learn from each other. Because I think that's usually how it happens. Okay. So when you're talking about the dollar, it sounds more like the way we would share currency, paper or coin is going to be gone. Like that's not going to have value anymore, and it's going to be more digitalized.
Correct. And for the other group, it feels more like bartering for goods and services.
Okay.
So it really does feel like two polar opposites existing on the same planet.
Hmm.
Um, but both, like you said, have great aspects to them and they both could learn a lot from each other. And I think that will take some time,
Yeah.
right? Because the discord between groups of people, and we could go through different groups of people for ourselves and think about it in our own lives and what we see in our own communities and country. But that feels unfortunately like it continues. It feels like the split continues, at least through this year. It feels like it gets louder and louder. And unfortunately, it doesn't feel like we've hit the top of that noise meter. It
Hmm.
feels like we're it's like a crescendo, it feels like we're going up the hill and it's getting louder and louder, but we are not to the top of this yet. And I think that anybody that is tuned in to headlines, if that's something that aligns with them, I think there's going to be a lot of shock and awe this year about, wow, now that's happening. It's going to feel even like what we feel today, where we could turn on the news and there's five massive news stories, you know? So that's going to continue to increase where we might feel like it's not going to ever end or it's not going to stop. It's just going to keep, escalating. And I think eventually they show it to me in my mind's eye right now, like the tower card in the tarot deck, that we're eventually going to burn symbolically all of the major systems down. And some of them will be negotiated and made better, and some of them will have to be created from the ground up. But I think that's why a lot of people actually chose to incarnate right now, was to see the dismantling and to be a part of what's going to be rebuilt. Because I think our local communities, and that could be Uranus and Gemini, but I just keep feeling like the people we live around, our neighbors, the groups that we are a part of in person, those are going to become absolutely critical
Yeah.
in the months and few years to follow. And asking ourselves, doing almost like an inventory of, where am I plugged in my own community? Could I do more of that? Do I know my neighbors? Because energetically, we're going to really be relying on each other during these next few years. And Spirit has said that this continues through the next several years. Like, it feels like there's a lot of massive change. And they always take me to like the early 2030s.
Oh, really?
As like this is a drastic period of change between now and the early 2030s. Feels like we could call it, 32, 33, and it feels like everything about our lives is different. Like that we could point back and be like, oh, remember in 2025 when we used to do this, this, and this? And we get to, 8 years from now, we're like, yeah, but it feels like a lifetime ago because that's not how we do anything anymore. So it feels like it's that big of
Mm-hmm.
a shift, and
Mm-hmm.
systems that we've come to rely upon in some ways feel like some of those go away forever. And some of them feel like they get drastically modified. So we could think about anything that we are plugged into right now, which could be education, healthcare, money, all of them are up for change over these next several years. But 2026 is a year that is coming in hot, and it is going to keep boiling as we move through this year.
Yeah, well, year of the fire horse, not surprised with that, but also just the Neptune Saturn in Aries energy as well. I mean, we really do have a shift from the feminine water earth energy, fully embodying more of the air fire masculine energy as we get closer to the middle of this year. And so, the last really remaining one is once, Neptune is well, when this airs, Neptune will already be in Aries and Saturn is right behind it. And then we've got Uranus moving into Gemini. I think Uranus moving into Gemini because Gemini really does represent our local communities. And that is something even I have been noticing. Like, I've been working online for the last, 10 years or so. And I'm really noticing like I really want to do more connection locally. I want to get more involved with my community here in Colorado and just like what can I do here? And I think that's going to be a big change on how the systems that we have through our local communities, I think are going to be drastically changing how we interact with one another, how we communicate. Like, it may even be like, did I just see something the other day about not even needing like Wi-Fi to talk to one another or something? Like, there was just going to be, I don't know if who it was, but I just saw that you won't even need that anymore to like communicate with like your neighbor down the road or something, like some super advanced, like it's just it's using air or something, which makes sense, right? Because air, Gemini and Aquarius, where Pluto and Uranus are air signs. And then Uranus is obviously ruler of Aquarius. So I just think we're going into times where, yeah, change is is not just imminent, it's to be expected and at levels that we've never experienced, the speeds. It's going to be rapid, rapid, rapid. So what would be I definitely want to touch on the Saturn Neptune energy, but before I do, in all of the predictions you've got for this year, what is the most intriguing one to you?
Ooh, good question. There's one I am concerned about because of the ripple effect.
Hmm.
And I would never wish harm on anyone. And I, frankly, am politically neutral. I just look at the energy. But with that said, I am concerned about Trump and him being able to finish his presidency.
Hmm.
And whether you like him, you don't like him, or you're neutral, like most people have an opinion about him. But if he doesn't finish his presidency, it feels like what I see psychically is like things being lit on fire. It feels like the ripple is actually very negative and leads to more of the energy of civil war in the United States.
Hmm.
And I know some people might be like, yeah, I don't want him in the office. And psychically, I can tell you it looks far worse if he is not in office. And that might be hard to imagine, but the Civil War really kicks up, is what I've been shown on that timeline. I am concerned about his health. When I've looked at it, it's felt very, very bumpy for this year. And I know there's been speculation in the media, but I have looked at it and seen that as well as being part of his energy signature right now. Moving forward, it does feel like the office itself of President of the United States changes. And it feels as if the power goes actually and more so back to individual states. And I've seen that in the future, we will look back and look at a map, from the 2020s
Hmm.
and see how much change has happened on the map based on where the boundary lines are. So I do think that some of the states that have talked about creating different state lines or banding with other states together to create more of like a super state, that actually feels accurate
Oh.
in the predictions that there will be states that will end up doing that. And with that, the United States of America feels like it changes. And it could be that we name ourselves something different, but the map itself feels like we're in the future looking back at how much has changed. So I find that really intriguing
Hmm.
that we've known about having all these presidents over the years and we've been all of these states and students have been learning about the United States of America for so long and it feels like we are on the precipice of massive shifts within our own country. And that will also ripple out into other countries around the world that will also question their leadership. Because going back to the local community thing for one moment, there was this prediction that had come through to say, yes, the local community is going to be of the utmost importance in our day-to-day life. But it also feels like it's not just going to be elected officials that will be in charge. It feels like there's going to be a rise in grassroots initiatives, grassroots leaders that are not elected, but are just as or even more effective than the elected officials that are in positions in the local communities. So if you're somebody that's felt like, I want to help lead my community, but I would never run for office, I actually think there's going to be opportunities for you to do that in your own town, regardless of where you live, that
Mm-hmm.
I think could be exciting for some people.
Oh, that's so interesting. And like, so one of the things that I think is interesting too about Uranus moving into Gemini is that that is the United States one-to-one relationship house, right? So partnerships and things of that nature. Do you see any specific, because I would assume there's going to be some shakeups in current partnerships and agreements and those falling apart and new ones forming with unexpected partnerships. Are you seeing that for this year?
Yes, I've actually looked at the relationship between the US and Russia as
Uh-huh.
an example. And the energy keeps going back and forth, back and forth. And it's like playing Pictionary with spirit, when you have clairvoyant messages come through. And it feels like people may think they are the enemy, but actually they're not. And then they go public and say something that makes you feel like they're the enemy, and then they're not. So I would really watch the dynamics between the US and Russia. I actually think there's a lot happening behind the scenes in that relationship that's
I
not public.
No, I feel this. I get full body chills even as we talk about it because I think there's going to be a change in that relationship publicly.
Yeah, I do too. And I think for a bit we might see where they're kind of playing the middle
Mm-hmm.
between China and the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I do ultimately, through the vision, feel like Russia and the United States actually band together. But it's just going to feel like which direction is up or down when we look at it in the news headlines.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that China is going to try to take Taiwan. And so I think there's going to be some massive headlines around Asia and what's happening over there and who gets what and a fight over that. And I do think I'm just seeing and hearing the United States getting pulled into that
Mm-hmm.
and like sticking up for Taiwan is the psychic impression. So expect headlines on that. It feels right now, as I look at it, that China's shaky around it, meaning I think that they will try to go for it, but I'm getting the sense of like them pushing back, pushing back. So to me, psychically, my interpretation of that would be that they are not effective or they do not end up getting it, but it feels like it's going to be on the table. And I also feel we've seen headlines around Panama Canal, Cuba, Greenland, right? Mexico has been in the news. And what I'm hearing psychically is believe him, meaning when Trump says, I'm going to go and reach a deal with Greenland, he means it. When he says, I'm going to take Panama Canal, he means it. So there's a lot that he is doing behind the scenes too. It's almost like moving chess pieces or like
Mm-hmm.
putting a jigsaw together, but that he is really telling you what he's going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And Venezuela doesn't feel like it's a standalone operation. I think we will see more headlines around what the United States is doing with other leaders in other countries in ways that we have never seen in our lifetime. But I do feel that pressure and that hotness on Mexico, Cuba, and Greenland. Those are the three that I feel most predominantly.
Mm-hmm.
And then Panama Canal is still there in
Mm-hmm.
the energy. So I think that we'll see more headlines about that. But basically, and I'll add, I was going to say, oh my gosh, basically, it's like, everything's on the table this year. But one more thing I'll add to this is as they're popping it in front of me clairvoyantly, it does feel like the United States and Europe really are in a fight. I know sometimes we might look at the news and wonder, like, is this just fodder? Like, are we just, pawns watching this and consuming this information? But energetically, they actually feel like they are not friends right now. And it feels like that energy will become more apparent of the two countries being foes.
Mm-hmm.
And that feels like a change to obviously like who we've had as an ally for so long. But it doesn't feel like we're on the same page with them.
Yeah, and that's why I feel like Russia's stepping in. Like I really do. I mean, who knows? Nothing's set in stone, but it does feel as soon as I heard Russia coming, I was like, oh, it's finally happening. Like I feel very strongly that that's going to be a relationship that is new. And I do feel the European and US relationships have been strained for a very long time, beneath the surface in a sense of there's been a lot of bad deals, going on there. And so I'm not surprised that that would be something that would be coming up. Um, and would you say, because you spoke about China maybe taking Taiwan, would you say that the Venezuela incident was to minimize or delay or hinder China from being able to take Taiwan?
Spirit shows it like kind of using that same symbolism I used earlier of the web, how things are more connected than maybe what we
Hmm.
realize at first glance.
Hmm.
There, I channeled on Venezuela when it was first making news headlines because it didn't feel quite right. Like it didn't feel like it was about the ships or the boats that had drugs on them. Like it never felt like that. And so looking at it, I remember now as you asked this question, part of what was channeled was this has something to do with an ally or something to do that like what another country needs a favor for.
Mm.
And now as you ask that question, I'm like, oh, of course, like this makes
Mm.
complete sense. And so, yeah, I think it actually had to do with this bigger picture of what's happening with China and Taiwan because it never felt like it was about natural resources either. I felt like it was a part of it, but it never quite computed based on what we were hearing in the headlines. So I'm glad you brought that up because now I'm able to click some
Okay.
some of that together. Hmm.
Well, that's cool. I love it when that happens.
Yeah.
Okay, so sounds like we're in for a doozy of a year, as you said. Buckle up. With all that being said, I kind of want to bring it a little more personal for everyone, since we've kind of gone global. And since my audience, and I'm pretty sure a large part of your audience is too, very spiritual in nature, whatever that might mean to them. But do you see in this year, and I say this because of the Saturn Neptune moving into Aries at the 0 degrees, um, do you see anything where anyone who's working from the spiritual perspective or bringing in spirituality um, through work, their mission, their business, whatever it might be, like really benefiting in this year if there's certain things they take advantage of or step into? Like, is there anything that you see with that?
Yes. So this is a year for healers and therapists and coaches that will really be able to go next level with their work. And I have chills running through my whole body as I say that, because I think there's going to be a lot of people that haven't leaned in spiritually or haven't gotten curious about themselves that are going to be looking for help. And we are very well positioned to be doing this work in 2026 and beyond and helping to be a guide. I kind of think of myself as like standing next to someone holding a flashlight as we walk through the dark cave and
Mhm.
looking through all the pieces of their life. So, absolutely, yes. The one caveat to that I'm feeling nudged to say out loud is I really feel like the influencer energy is dying and
Mhm.
dead. And that doesn't feel like a train that anyone should want to jump onto because it feels like it's a train to nowhere. But it goes back to what we were saying earlier about being heard and being seen and being okay with that. Because and I haven't talked about this publicly, but I've been getting downloads that like even places like Facebook and Instagram are starting to die off and that people aren't going on there. And I know that some people might get alerted and go, oh my God, what do you mean? Like, how am I going to run my business? I've been feeling very energetically pulled to YouTube. and pulled to transformation content, and that is where the energy is pointing to, which, I have a huge following on Instagram and Facebook. And even that, we talked earlier about like the new door opening, right? So even I am taking my own advice and energy and going, really? Like, what am I going to do? Like, how,
Oh, I feel
how
it.
am I
I
going to,
feel it inside you and I know it. I trust me, I know. I'm gonna have to share with you after we get off the show, like what I've been getting, but um that might resonate. Like you'll understand it. But it's true. I've said it before. I'm pretty sure I said it on a video last year that looking at the astrology, the influencer kind of identity is going to die. Like if you think that's a way to continue moving, it's not going to sustain itself because we're shifting away from that. So it's really cool to hear that come from you and that you haven't even shared that really anywhere with the Instagram
yeah.
and Facebook stuff.
And it can be rattling, especially somebody hearing this that has built a following online, or they've put a lot of time and energy into these social media platforms.
Hmm.
Because the natural question, I think, for most people will be, well, then what do I do, or how do I find people? And I think that goes back to some of the things we've been talking about, our own community, the people around us, who they know, more referrals. But I do think that it's going to be more of the independent, long form content that
Hmm.
adds a lot of value for people. And that is YouTube. And
Hmm.
so if I were hearing this and I'm going to be taking my own advice, I would be putting more focus and energy into YouTube than I would on any other social platform. And, X is still feeling like it's got energy there. But when I look at Instagram and Facebook, and I would even say TikTok, those three feel like they are drastically going to be shifting. And it feels like there are many people leaving those platforms or just not logging in or not looking at them anymore. And I don't think they've come out and talked about that publicly.
Hmm.
So if I were talking to a new business owner or somebody that has an existing business and they said, where should I, put my time and energy? I'd say YouTube
Hmm.
and figure it out. There's all kinds of videos you can watch on how to start a YouTube channel or how to create content that people are interested in. But that's where I feel the pull energetically when I look at business for 26.
I just Hearing this makes me smile, more for like my own personal reasons, just because so many things have been changing for me over the last 4 months. And I was for so long, like well, not so long, because it's only been 4 months, but for a good chunk of that, I was like, well, I don't understand. Why is it not working? What am I doing wrong? Whatever. And as you're saying this, it's so many things are clicking into place for me of like the why. And especially now that I know the door that's opened up and that it's pushed me through, that I can see like, oh, I've been prepared well ahead of the curve of what's coming. And so thank you for the shitstorm that you put me through because there is a shitstorm already coming. I'm just ahead of that shitstorm.
Yeah, because me and you and a lot of other people listening right now will identify as somebody who is energetically sensitive. And one thing I've learned about that is that the price of being sensitive is being sensitive. And we will normally feel it and experience it before everyone else. And that can be a blessing if we lean into it and get
Mhm.
curious about it and we don't
Mhm.
let it rock our socks off in a bad way.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Wow. Well, it's been such a pleasure to have you on the show, Dalissa. I'm so glad we connected. Thanks for reaching out. And, before you go, please, one, let my audience know where they can find you if they don't already follow you and what you've got going on. And also, if you want to leave them with a kind of a parting message for 2026.
Yes, my website's the best place to find all of my classes and offerings and my social media and all that. It's spiritandspark.com, all spelled out. And I love Rumi. Rumi, the poet, is like one of my favorites to read quotes from and poems from. And The quote that's coming to mind right now is, the wound is the place where the light enters. And so, whatever wounds, whatever bruises and scrapes you have symbolically this year, please remember that in every dark corner or every challenge or dark night of the soul, there's always going to be light. There's always going to be a blessing in the darkest spots. And remember that and try to find that in each moment of each day when things feel like they get tough, because you are more resilient than you know. And hearing this today, I hope you feel that through your whole body, because you will get through whatever is ahead on the pathway and you will be better for it in the long run.
So beautiful. And so timely. Perfect. Thank you, Dallisa, for coming on the show. And to my audience, don't forget to share this episode with all your family and friends and anyone. There's some really good stuff in here. And of course, predictions that have not been shared anywhere else. Thank you so much, Dallisa, for coming on the show. And to my audience, also don't forget, if you are still thinking that you'd like to come to the 3-day 180 retreat on February 26th, I'd love to have you there. This is where, if there is a door that you feel like you are meant to walk through, but you have no idea where that door is, this is the retreat that helps you find it. This is the retreat that also will give you the roadmap to what your next few steps need to be. So if you're really wanting to take the initiative, as we talked about on this podcast, to really step forward into that new identity that is fully embodied and take advantage of the fact that if you're a healer, if you're into spiritual practice in any way, this is a year to be seen. This is a year to be heard. And the 3-day 180 retreat is one of the most supportive retreats in getting you there. I love you guys. Have an incredible year or week, and I will see you guys next time. Thanks again for joining me for another show on the Enlighten Up podcast. I love you guys so much for all of your continued support. So remember to raise your vibe, find your tribe, and be open to the infinite possibilities held in the mysteries that surround us all. Thanks again for sharing the show with your family and friends. And if you're new to the show and you need to find out more information about me, please head on over to my website, NicoleFrolick.com, where you can join my newsletter. And please follow me on Instagram, Telegram, and YouTube. Keep your light bright, and I'll see you next week.